Hi, this is John Malvey from My Bookkeeper Software. In this video, we're going to give you an overview of Bookkeeper. We'll show you the different processes at a 30,000 foot level and kind of just show you where things are, how to navigate around. We're not going to go into any detail in any one area, as there are other videos and help files that kind of give you more specifics on any particular process within Bookkeeper. This is kind of just an introductory overview of where you can find things in Bookkeeper and how to get you up and running very quickly. Okay, so for starters, when you first start Bookkeeper, it'll always present you with the company selection. So with Bookkeeper, you can have up to 6 different companies. Bookkeeper normally comes with a Wally's Widget World sample company that you can play around with. You can delete that company at any time if you need to make room for your 6th company, but Wally's Widget is one company and you can always add 5 more after that. It's always recommended that you don't modify Wally's widget for your own purposes. Play around with it, do what you need to do, but don't use that for any real world kind of transactions. So I'm just going to go into Wally's World. And it's going to do some initialization. And the first thing that comes up is a company overview screen. And in here, this gives you kind of just a basic, quick view of your bank accounts, how many different, checking accounts, savings accounts you have, what their balances are. It gives you your AR in an aging format that you can drill down into to see the details. Same thing on an AP side, you can see the aging. Here you have your to-dos and reminders. So these are quick links for things like, oh, I got to print some checks, or I got to close the books, or back up my database. And then in this section here are customizable tasks that you can set up. So from here you can add or just do any kind of reminders that you want to do for yourself. Okay, so once you close out of here, you end up at the Bookkeeper main screen. And this here is kind of like your landing page, for where you want to launch to do any kind of the Bookkeeper transactions. And it's divided into 4 sections that you'll primarily spend most of your time with. Up top is the payables. So here's where you'll do all of your bill paying, all of your expenses and vendor management and such. The next section here is your inventory, managing your inventory, purchase orders and such. And then this section here will be all your sales, invoicing, payments, and then down the bottom is payroll. Along the side, there are some other areas for specific company kinds of tasks, banking tasks. And then you also have a full range of options within the menu. Now the menu is also going to contain every option that you see here, plus there'll be a handful of other options that are not on here that's only available through the menu. And we'll touch on those really quick. So let's start at the top in the payable section. So the first option here, manage vendors. So vendors are going to be companies that you want to make an expense payment to. Now it's not necessary that you set up a vendor ahead of time before you make an expense. Within Bookkeeper, you can add vendors on the fly as you create the transaction. But if you want to capture a lot of detailed information about the vendor, you can certainly set them up here and they'll be available at transaction time. In the enter payables, payables will be for bills that you want to set up as recurring or bills that you want to pay at a later time. You don't have to set up a bill before you pay it. If you went to a hardware store and you wrote a check to buy something for the company, you could just simply create a check transaction for it, for that vendor, and you're good to go. But if you wanted to set up something like, say, a car payment that's maybe on a recurring basis, you can go in and enter that payable here, and you can pay it at a later time using this pay bills section here. So pay bills is really related to any payables that you may enter. So if you enter payables, if you're on an accrual basis, then you're certainly going to want to use enter payables as opposed to on a cash basis. And if you're not sure if you should be on accrual or cash basis, just talk with your accountant to see. Typically on an accrual basis, what hits your GL account is different, the different timing as opposed to when you're on a cash basis. But again, if you're on accrual, you'll probably want to do the enter payables. And any payables that you have here would be paid through your pay bills option here. It allows you to select which payables you want to pay, and then you can go on to the transactions and pay them. If you're just using a cash transaction, you want to make an expense payment, you can either choose one of these options here, whether or not you pay it by a debit or a credit card, or you made a cash payment, which can also be an electronic payment. You can do that here. Or if you wrote a check, you can do that here. So again, if you're just doing transactions that you're paying to vendors, you can just do all of that here. If you want to do stuff that you want to pay bills at a later time, you can do that through this process here. The print checks is the check print queue. So when you click on this, it'll open up a queue of all the checks that would need to get printed. In your inventory, it starts with the purchase order items. And in here, you would just enter any purchase order items that you want to be able to maintain, and these will be available for selection when you create purchase orders. And in here is where you would enter the purchase orders, you'd go to receive them, and then they would get put into your inventory. Now again, you don't need to have inventory in Bookkeeper to be able to use them for invoicing or selling them to customers. It's an option if you want to be able to kind of track your inventory, make adjustments, those kinds of things. You can do that, but it's certainly not necessary to have items in Bookkeeper that you want to invoice. You don't need to do inventory. If you want all the options within inventory, by all means, go ahead and use it. It's here for you. In the sales section, this first item here, Manage Items and Services, allows you to enter services as well as items that you want to invoice from. And so, again, like we just mentioned, if you didn't want to use the inventory process within Bookkeeper, you could certainly just set up items within here that are available on your invoice. And if you're doing services, you would just set them up here and they would be available on your invoice. Customers, again, just like vendors, you can set up your customers ahead of time if you want and have detailed information about them. You can also add customers on the fly. You can also create invoices that aren't related to customers at all. So if you were using Bookkeeper in a POS situation, you can just create an invoice without creating any kind of customer at all, and you can just create a sale that way. The estimates and invoices is where you would create your estimates and invoices, and it will take in whatever you have set up in your items and services, as well as your inventory that you can be able to create an invoice from. There's a lot of options here, a lot of flexibility, but this is where you would go to your invoicing. When you receive payments on your invoicing, you want to mark them as paid. You would use this option here. It'll allow you to select the payments and apply it to whatever invoices and such that are outstanding. The undeposited funds account is it's kind of like a holding area for payments that are received on invoices that you choose to put into this kind of a holding account. So when you receive a payment on an invoice, you can decide whether or not you want that payment to be deposited directly to your checking account, or do you want to put it into this batch area here so that you can look at these things and then deposit the batch to your checking account at a later time. So that's all that this is here. And you have that option when you receive the payment. You can decide, do I want to deposit it to my checking account, or do I want to deposit it to my undeposited funds account? If you put it into the undeposited funds account, this screen just allows you to see what's there and say, okay, I'm ready to deposit, and you can deposit directly to your checking account. Managing jobs for your customers. If you have jobs that you want to track with these, you can do that here. Jobs are available when you're doing expense payments or when you're setting up an invoice. You can tie those directly to a job. You can look at job profitability, and there's a lot of other options if you want to be able to do that. This option here allows you to accept credit cards. You can sign up for a merchant account that allows you to process credit cards within Bookkeeper seamlessly. As you receive the payment, one of the options would be to take in that credit card and do the authorization and the payment transaction using a credit card. You do have to use a third-party merchant services that you have to sign up for. But once you do that, you enter that information within Bookkeeper, and you're good to go. The payroll section here down the bottom. So we have manage employees, and again, you do need to set these up ahead of time before you create payroll. And you have timesheets. Timesheets are not necessary to be able to create transactions or create payroll checks. You can if you want to, and if you do create timesheets, they can be imported when you do the payroll process. The create paychecks is where you would create your payroll checks. It does the automatic calculation for all the taxes and all kinds of withholdings and deductions that you have set up. Now, depending on whether you're using, Bookkeeper has a basic payroll function and an advanced payroll function. So depending on when you set up your company, you have the option of choosing whether or not you want to have standard, basic, or advanced payroll. And those are the different setup options when you create a company. And basic is very simple. I mean, there are other videos that we have that kind of show you, which to choose, or you can take a look and see what options are available for you. We have customers that want sometimes the ease of just having a nice basic payroll option. Other ones want a little more advanced options with their payroll, and so it goes both ways. But you can't mix between the two. So your company's either set up with basic or with payroll, and basic or advanced. If you do have basic, you can upgrade to advanced, but you can't go backwards. So once you're at advanced, you cannot go back to basic. Tax forms here brings you to the list of reports that are available. So if this is where you want to go to do your 940, 941, or W-2s, 1099s, you can click that here. Print checks also brings you to the check print queue. Make payroll deposits. If you want to be able to see your payroll deposit information for all of your withholdings, you can do that here. Certainly not necessary, but it's an option for you if you want. Along the right side here in the company selection, well, I guess up here for the search, you have a quick way to be able to do, you can do a global search for different kinds of text or whatever across different kinds of transactions. Or if you specifically want to search for different specific types of transactions, you have the option to do that here. In the company section, you'll have the company overview options. You can manage your chart of accounts. You can make journal entries, set up your budgets, view an interactive trial balance, and you can close your books for the year. Again, closing the books is not necessary, but it's an option for you if you want to distribute your profit and loss across your equity accounts. For banking, you have your ability to manage banks, manage accounts. Bookkeeper allows you to have up to 25 different bank accounts. It's important to note that Bookkeeper works on one bank account at a time. So when you're doing the transactions, you always have a current bank account that you're working with. There is an option, I'll show you in the menu, that how you switch between bank accounts, but keep in mind that if you're using multiple bank accounts, that Bookkeeper will perform the transactions and reports against whatever the current bank account happens to be. So always keep that in mind. This gives you transfer funds, gives you the ability to transfer funds between your accounts. Make deposits simply makes a deposit to one of your bank accounts. So let's say you're not using Bookkeeper to do invoicing, but you do want to be able to record. So you're managing invoicing elsewhere, but you do want to record the cash or the payment transaction within Bookkeeper. You can just simply make a deposit transaction. ATM transactions you can manage. Bank reconciliation allows you to kind of reconcile your bank account statement. And if you need to make adjustment to your bank account, just a simple, it's not related to a transaction, you just need to adjust it for whatever reason, you can do that here. And then there's also options for ordering your checks and forms and ordering tax tables as well. Okay, so from the menu, here's the option under File for you can create a new company, open up an existing company, or delete a company. For importing, you can import data from a variety of sources, including external files. You have your printer set up, your different print queues for checks, invoices, and purchase orders. In the company menu, similar things, open up and delete and create a new company, manage your current company information. This is your company, detail information. There's a lot to set up here. If you're setting up your merchant account, or you're setting up your advanced payroll options, you would do that through here. And company overview is that screen you see when you first enter Bookkeeper, you'll see that here. So again, you see a lot of these options are a lot of the similar ones we've talked about already. You can manage your sales tax definitions, different expense types. So these are different types of lists or drop downs that you'll see within the Bookkeeper transactions, so you can manage those options within here. For banking, bank accounts, and here's the option to change your current bank account. So if you need to switch between another account, you would choose that option here, and then whatever new account you select will become the transactions that Bookkeeper will use. Reconcile account, reconcile credit card transactions. So this is something if you have your Visa or MasterCard statement that you want to reconcile, you can do that here. Use an electronic download file. So for sales, again, so I'll just hit on some of the new ones here: payroll, sales, and use tax. So you have that. These are a bunch of different lists that are available that you can manage. For payables, so this one here, create payables from received purchase orders. Normally when you receive a purchase order, you'll be able to create the bill to pay that at that time. But let's say you just received the purchase order and you want to pay the bill at a later time, you can use this option to do that. Vendor credits, vendor expenses, activate a vendor. If you have a vendor that you inactivate because you think you're not going to have to do any more business with them, you can deactivate them. But let's say at a later point you do want to reactivate them, you can do that here as well. So for payroll, a lot of the similar kinds of things. Payroll deposit. External payroll is for third-party payroll services that you may have. Inventory, you have the ability to do fixed assets, inventory groupings, or kits. A lot of those other similar ones we talked about. For accounting, pretty much all that we've hit before. Different types of searching. Your reports, so these are all your reports that are available. These are your advanced payroll reports. Utilities to do your backup. And then for your help, you have your Bookkeeper help. And you'd visit our site and you can see other tutorials that are available and get technical support. And that's it. That gives you the high-level overview of Bookkeeper. Look for other videos that'll give you more detail on the specific areas you're looking for. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being a Bookkeeper customer.